Lightweight, step it aside when we come in. Feel it in your chest, the syllables get pumping. People on the street get panic and start running. Words on loose leaf sheet, complete coming. I jump on my mind, I summon the rhyme, I'm dumping. Feeling blind, I promise to let the sun in. Strip of the dark ways, we march to the drumming. Jump when they tell us that they want to see jumping. Dad, I want to see some fist pumping. Lift something, take back what's yours. Say something that you know they might attack you for. Cause I'm sick of being treated like I have before. Like a stupid standing for what I'm standing for. Like this war's really just a different brand of war. Like it doesn't.
And welcome today to Wide Awake Radio, Wide Awake News, hosted by Charlie McGrath. This is Warren Pollock filling in for Charlie today. He's out. And it's an interesting time in our lives. I think what we're beginning to see is something that has been evolving, not only just over the last few years with the financial crisis and with 9/11, but has really been evolving for centuries. And every now and again in human history, there's a time where we're put up against the wall and we have to make the right choice between our own evolution and our own survival. And this is one of those times. And people constantly, are asking me what kind of ideology I follow. And I really don't follow an ideology. What I like to think about is something called the critical path. And that critical path is some of the thinking philosophy of a fellow named Buckminster Fuller. And what he's done for us in a sort of very cryptic way through his book, The Critical Path, is he's outlined the list of human achievements and the entire history of humankind. And he's designed for us a new paradigm, a new way of thinking about things called comprehensive anticipatory design science, where we start to realize that some of our previous assumptions are wrong. So let me just read you a small part of the critical path. And it says, in 1800, Thomas Malthus, a professor of economics at the East India College, was the first human in history to complete an inventory of the world's vital and economic statistics. And he said, basically, pray all you want, said Malthus, it will do you no good. There is no more. So we're watching the process of there not being enough to go around take hold worldwide as more people are seeking a higher standard of living on the back of a limited supply of natural resources. The natural resources worldwide that might be in shortfall. And we have a functioning system of law and financial-based capitalism. And hello, guys. I see all the notes in the chat board, by the way. We have this idea of a law and financial-based capitalism, which Fuller described as law cap and also financial-based capitalism, which was all about maximizing the good for a minimal amount of people and arranging the world using a military poker hand, rigging the military poker hand to your advantage. And we've seen that progression through the British Empire and now into the U.S. Empire. And the more you think about it, and the more you look at the United States, its conduct and performance, the more it is starting to exhibit some of the negative characteristics of the very people that we are fighting philosophically over decades. And those people include the Soviet Union, they include Nazi Germany, and we're starting to go and exhibit some of these same characteristics. And what's sort of amazing to me is that the people in the United States, a few of them are awake and many of them are on the Wide Awake News chat board, and I say hello to you, but a large majority of them aren't. And denial, I'm going to quote the chat board in one of my videos today, denial is a strong emotion which seems to have stifled the masses. So we can't really deny where we are. We sort of have to embrace it. And to deny things which are dividing and conquering us, such as these ideologies, and these ideologies that we're rallying around are all based on someone else's pocketbook, someone else's money. And if you want to prove that out, you can go to a site called OpenSecrets.com, and they'll outline for you every single politician that is accepting money from a corporate entity. And I'm not going to rant like I did yesterday. I think somebody wants me to start ranting, but I'm going to maintain low tones today, hopefully. And that's what I said to Charlie yesterday before I was ranting. And it sort of does, and I quote, chap my ass, that our entire political system is owned by a few corporations, and very few people want to acknowledge that. Now, on my chat board it says, someone's accusing me, saying, you began by talking about two dissidents in China and the former Soviet Union, and then went on to make a comparison between their circumstances and the so-called American dissidents here in the States. Disingenuous, preposterous to put the two circumstances at the same level. Yeah, things aren't so great in our country right now. But as far as comparing it to China and the former Soviet Union, seriously? And he says, well, have you ever lived in a foreign country? And I've lived 5 years in Canada. I used to travel worldwide, and I can tell you, I traveled behind the Iron Curtain before it was opened up, and I could tell you the U.S. is approaching the point of the Soviet Union. It's approaching the point of communist China. And the people are in denial with very few dissonants, ready to challenge this great money machine at Goldman Sachs, this great money machine of organized healthcare that has co-opted our government and shredded the Constitution. Now, I'd like you to pause it and think about and not react to the fact that could we consider that the Constitution of the United States is no longer enforced? Could it be that the Supreme Court recently said that they were in favor of unlimited corporate funding of the lobbying process of putting corporate money behind the election? So how can we have a free country? How can we have a free country if it can be bought by the highest bidder? And how can we go on living as a global society? And I'm going to use the word global society because we share the small Earth. You can see it from space, how small it is. And we share a limited number of resources. And what happens if one day soon, we're not entitled to those resources in the U.S. because we're not managing our finances correctly, because we can't afford great military projection? What happens to our energy supply? What happens to our freedom? And there are people, I think, in the government that see this. And all of these things which we see occurring today, these details, are all dislocations. Dislocations are things like the big stock market crash. Dislocations are the things such as 9/11. We don't seem to understand why these things are happening, yet they are all happening because this century-old system that started in 1600s with the East India Company is beginning to wear thin. And we have a lot of people who have vested interest in seeing it continue. That's why your politicians are willing to take your money, and they're willing not to work to your interests, but they want to work to the interests of the people that pay them. And we're watching this breakdown crisis extend itself into our personal lives as more people become disenfranchised, they become poor, and they wonder why their jobs aren't there, having been exported over 25 or 30 years to China. So I think we're going to be coming up on our first break, and I want to welcome everyone here again to Wide Awake News. And I very much appreciate filling in for Charlie. I'm sure I'm not going to do a good job as him. And he and I always talk about not ranting, and I'm always 1 second away from a rant. And hopefully we'll get cooler minds prevailing today with Chris Green, who will be introduced as a guest in the next segment. But denial is a strong emotion, and it stifled the masses. How many people have tried to get relatives to wake up? I really don't know. It's very hard to get people to see what's right in front of them. And I hope we wake up and realize that through planning, through design science, through comprehensive anticipatory design science, we can understand that there are solutions to the current problems, and there is a way out from this abyss. And we can go and build infrastructure. We can educate our children. We can go and build the kind of society that was imagined after World War II. And right now, we want things to be better for ourselves and for our children, and we've mortgaged the future as a few people have managed to monopolize our financial system. So here we have it. Again, I want to welcome everyone. Fisker 1, Johnny Orinoto. What's up, Charlie? Well, Charlie's not here today. And let's see some aliens across the chat board. Welcome back to Wide Awake News, and I'd like to bring on in a few seconds Christopher Green of Green Wave TV. Christopher is among a few of us YouTube video bloggers who have been talking about positive change in the economy. He runs a financial firm and is, I think, an investment advisor, and he's talked about a lot of things such as gold and silver and also the economy. So I'd like to welcome on Christopher. Are you there, Christopher?
Yeah, I'm here, Warren. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and welcome to Wide Awake News, Wide Awake Radio. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your financial practice, and tell us a little bit about where we're going.
Yeah, sure. You know, in terms of where we're going, you know, just like you kind of mentioned here a few minutes ago, I mean, the problem with America today, the problem is that we've mortgaged the next 100 years in this country. And you know, in my opinion, the economic system and our economy is broken. And the evidence for that was 2008. You know, and I asked myself the question time and time again, you know, what has changed in this country? Has there been any meaningful reform, you know, since living through the horror of the last couple of years? And I can't find an answer to that question. I mean, we have every major regulatory and oversight committee in this country that includes the Federal Reserve, the SEC, the CFTC, and the host of others failed to do their job in regulating our financial system. And in my opinion, you know, if we were to give them a letter score, it'd be an F. Yet there's been no meaningful change. And, you know, as we look at, I guess, the current state of the economy and we look at the stock market, you know, it's clear that we have a huge, massive disparity between what's going on in the real economy and what's going on in Wall Street. You know, I'm looking at CNBC.com. We've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average at 11,400. And it's a complete mirage. You know, without the trillions and trillions of dollars of bailout stimulus, of multiple quantitative easing programs that we seem to get on a weekly basis now, I mean, you'd have the Dow Jones Industrial Average at 5,500. And, you know, it just begs the question, you know, what can we do? You know, how can we implement some kind of reform and positive change going forward? Because we have the same crooks and the same cronies that, you know, just basically lit the country on fire a few short years ago running the show. And there's been no meaningful change. And so, you know, I guess that's kind of the premise of a lot of the videos that I've been posting. And, of course, I'm familiar with yourself, Warren, and Charlie. And, by the way, I really enjoyed your recent video, The American Dissident. But I know in my heart that the American people, and even people abroad, because this is not just a domestic problem, this is a global problem, you know, people are waking up. You know, I really believe that people, quite frankly, are pissed off. I mean, we had $15 trillion destroyed in 2008, and all it was a manufactured transfer of wealth. And it went from the people of this country into the hands of the top 2%. You know, never before in history has there been a period of time where we've had the top 2% running the show, controlling 95% of the wealth, or at least we haven't experienced it in recent history. And that's the case now. And, as I look around me and I look at the real economy, it is clear we're not anywhere near a recovery. We're in a depression. There's no argument at all when you look at the reality, the cold, hard reality around you. And, I'm local out here in the state of Arizona, and, one of the fundamental things I look at is real estate, which was supposedly the reason and the impetus for the crash that we had on Wall Street in the first place. I remember President Bush on TV in 2008 telling us if we didn't bail out the banks with trillions and trillions of our money, that it would be Armageddon, that it would be, fire and brimstone on the streets. And now we're in a situation where we've got the Dow at 11,400. We've got the same crooks, the bankers paying record bonuses. The number's $144 billion this year. And I expect next year to be even greater for them. They're lining their pockets at the expense of the American people. And it's time that we implement some kind of change. So I know we said we weren't going to rant, Warren. I probably did a little bit, but a little bit. But you're out. Are you in the Phoenix area, or are you just in the wider Arizona, or where are you located? What's the landscape for real estate there? What are the job prospects, and are people struggling to get by? What's the situation? People are struggling. I'm in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and originally I'm from Southern California, so I'm one of the transplants out here. But I've been out here almost a decade, and it's been a complete massacre with residential real estate. Prices are off 50% in the best neighborhoods in just a few short years. Since the peak, which was about July of 2006 here in Arizona, and nothing's getting better. I mean, I know handfuls of people, because again, I'm in the business of finance, that aren't even paying their mortgage right now, and probably rightfully so. I mean, these are people that came in with 20% down payments 2 years ago and are 50% underwater in just a few short years. So
they rush in to buy a discount property, and then all of a sudden they put 20% down, and now it's cut in half. Is that the case? They saw a good deal 2 years ago at the start of the downturn, and then now they're underwater already?
Yeah, that's the case. So, you've got people that are underwater, and even the most prudent, people that, hey, they weren't investors. They weren't people trying to, flip property for a profit. They didn't own, 10 homes at a time or anything like that. I just know good people that, hey, they've done everything right their whole life, They're right. 55 years old, and I'm sorry?
Yeah, when I'm looking at, you had mentioned something which is sort of interesting. You said, okay, what changed? And if you look at the last decade of life, it's starting with 9/11, it goes all the way back to 1600. You can see a series of changes which occurred to bring us to the point we are today. What do you think is going to change the outlook for the better? And do you see any solutions set out there? Is it just stripping government away from corporations that could be a first step? Oh, we're rolling into a break, so we'll catch you back in a few minutes. Well, welcome back, and we were talking about with Chris pretty much the fact that many things have been changing in our society, in our economy, and things aren't where they usually should be or the way we expect them to be. And a lot of people are looking for rants. Well, they're really looking to understand why the world is breaking down, but they're also interested in solutions. And there are a lot of solutions you could have that are based very much so on common sense. For example, with corporations, I mean, we give corporations a charter. So if you give someone something like a charter to operate, you can demand something from them. You could demand that they be socially responsible. You could demand that they don't interfere with politics. You can demand a lot of things from corporations because you give them the ability to act as a person in your country. And right now, we as individuals have no rights, and it's the corporations that have a personhood all the way up to the Supreme Court, which validated their person. And right now, if we want to fight this whole situation, if we want to have progressive change or any kind of change whatsoever, when I mean progressive change, I mean positive change more than anything else, it's important for us to break down this great barrier that these corporations have erected that prevent change, a barrier of a mainstream media and the barrier of this political corruption, which has overcome the prospects of the United States. So, Chris, is there anything you could think of that could turn things around? Does it require integrity? Does it require more people understanding what's going on? I mean, how do you think we can help the situation now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think people are waking up to, the economic reality that we're living. And, people are aware that, there's something very wrong with what's happened over the past few years. And, they see it because they're looking at their bank accounts. And, they don't look anything like they used to look, but like a few short years ago. So, look, I love America, and, I love the principles in which it was founded on, although not perfect. I think we've had pretty much the best system here for a long time. But it's gotten to the point where it's gotten so corrupt and out of control that, the people of this country do have to wake up and start taking, some kind of steps to at least understand what's occurring and, to do something positive about it. So, I think there's a lot of smart entrepreneurial people in this country that are hard workers and, that live by a moral standard, which I don't think we see anymore. I don't think we see it on Wall Street. I don't think we see it with these big corporations, and I don't see it in these politicians. These politicians are lying to us. I mean, I don't necessarily put myself in one political party or another, but, if we look at President Obama, the guy hasn't done a single thing he said he was going to do. He said he'd pull out our troops, from all these wars that we're fighting. We're sending more. He said that, they would not extend the tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts, that they would actually try to budget our, gigantic national debt, which is $14 trillion. And, they just keep kicking the can down the road and not addressing the root evil and the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is, we need to start encouraging savings in this country, which we're not currently doing. We're discouraging it. We're rewarding the crooks. We're punishing the prudent. In order for the regular mom and pop to go out and seek a rate of return right now, they've got to get into stocks or something else very risky in order to get any kind of decent rate of return. They can't invest in CDs. They can't invest in a money market, and it's all because we're bailing out the bankers so they can make trillions and trillions of dollars on our backs.
So the fact that they're keeping rates low means that they're really stealing from people's savings by not offering them a return that matches inflation. So when you go to your bank or you go to your pension account and you find out it's not earning any money, you're actually losing money against the inflation that's there in the economy in life support that you need, like food and energy and that kind of thing. Is that what you're saying, Chris? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had Ben Bernanke on 60 Minutes a few days ago, and I can't believe they let this guy just come on national TV and lie all day long. I mean, he says that he's 100% confident that we won't see inflation. We're already seeing inflation. If you just look across all baskets, I mean, take a look at cotton. It's up, I think, 70% just a few short months. Take a look at gold and silver. Take a look at oil, on its way to $100, bucks a barrel. That's not good for the people of this country. It's, the fundamentals, as an investor, you look at the fundamentals, and the fundamentals of our system and of this economy are horrible. You've got record unemployment. You've got 20% or higher real unemployment in this country. You've got record poverty rates. You've got, in my opinion, the biggest hazard is the moral hazard. You've just told every generation from here on out that you're rewarded to be a crook. That's rewarded, because that's what we've done for the banks. We should have let these guys fail. Instead, they fear-mongered the American public into bailing out a broken system. And it just goes to show you who really runs this country, Warren. It's not the people. It's not even the politicians. It's the banks.
Yeah, it's the banks. And there's a fellow, I think, William Black, and he was a fellow who was a regulator. I think he was William K. Black, it may be. And he was a regulator and during the savings and loan crisis. And what he basically did was that he went in and saw all these banks that were fraudulent in the savings and loan crisis. And they shut them down, and they decided which ones had fraudulent loans, which ones were corrupt. and he had prompt corrective action of law, and he got all the corruption out of the system, and then we had a functioning banking system after he was done. And not a single bankster has gone to jail. Not a single bankster in the U.S. has gone to jail. And they have sort of this Bernard Madoff, who's just $43 billion. And what happened to the $12, $13, $14 trillion that have been stolen from us? What happened to the trillions of dollars of interest being stolen every day? And I was trying to talk to Charlie about quantitative easing. And a simple way to understand quantitative easing is that it's just, instead of borrowing from China, you're borrowing from people's pension plans. That's all it is. So you're going to make all of your pension plan holders and all your retirees and all your annuity holders bag holders for these criminals. And I think, Chris, I don't see any integrity in it. And I think this is a key to solution point, because you have to sort of look at yourself as a society in a mirror and find out what's wrong. Do a blood test, check your blood pressure, look at you, see how you feel, and diagnose the problem with some integrity and honesty, and then you can actually fix it. How do you feel about that? I mean, is that integrity totally lacking?
Well, I think it is. I mean, I think we've seen a lack of integrity. We don't see a lot of morality in, corporate America. We don't see it with our politicians, and we haven't seen it with these banks at all. So, we need to do something. As I've said before, I think that the people are ready for a change, and not the change that Obama was talking about, which, turned out to be just a big fat lie and more of the same, because nothing's changed. Nothing's happened. I know, as we've discussed before, we discussed the last time with Charlie when I was on the phone with you guys, there's a lot of great people out there talking about a lot of these issues and bringing it to the forefront of, the public conscious, which is, I think, the first step. But, the second step is to organize. Organize in a way where, I really think what we need to do is take what we're talking about to the mainstream media. I think a lot of us are doing a very great, good job, bringing this to the attention on the Internet with these alternative outlets.
Okay, we're approaching the break, and let's pick this up after the break, and we'll talk about getting the message out through the media.
Okay.
So I think that's, we'll talk about that after the break. We're just approaching it. And when I look at mainstream media, what I see is a highly controlled system owned by 4 corporations. So we're sort of this tiny voice in this alternate media, and we have to break into some sort of mainstream awareness. And that's, I think, why it's very important. These YouTube videos are very important, but I think it's just the first step. But you certainly raise, a key point. So I'm just here, and I want to thank the 68 people who are with us in the chat board today. It's certainly a little harder to run one of these radio shows, and all credit goes to Charlie. But I think we're talking about some very important things today, talking about integrity, we're talking about solution points, we're talking about this crisis, and it's not just Obama, and I'd agree with that statement, from the chat board. This is something that doesn't have anything to do with Democratic or Republican, and the country sure does need an enema, and we'll get back to you after the break. Welcome back to Wide Awake News. I'm here with Christopher Green. It's Warren Pollock. And we've just been talking about the media, mainstream media. And, every Thursday I look at the unemployment figures, and I look at the Bloomberg article, and it's always wrong in the Bloomberg article. And when I look at the statistics, the raw statistics, and then I look at the Bloomberg article, I say, where are these people from? And one day I called up this person in Bloomberg, Courtney Schlischerman, who was about 12. I think she just graduated college. And she was the one that put together the statistics. And I said, look, Courtney, how do you come up with these statistics? And she says, well, we really can't track them because they're very volatile. I said, well, there's all sorts of statistical ways that you can track them, and any economist worth his salt could tell you what the picture is. But when I read all the articles in the mainstream media and in Bloomberg, I find hardly any of them to be correct or complete. And then I see a lot of fear in the alternate media and a lot of conspiracies. So a lot of times I do primary research where I look directly at the first source of the information, but you really can't get a whole picture of what's going on by following the mainstream media. But, Chris, do you think we need to get the mainstream media on board? And how can we do this if they're owned by the corporations?
Well, you know, if you look at what's going on right now, I mean, what they've done is just diverted the attention from the real problems, and, you know, they're too busy, you know, pointing a finger at Julian Assange. You know, so that's what the mainstream news is reporting. I mean, no one was talking about this guy when he came out with the Iraqi war logs because Tiger Woods was mainstream news. You know, everyone needed to know who that guy was, you know, screwing at that given point in time. So, you know, I agree with the fact that, you know, this isn't just a, you know, Obama problem or any, you know, politician's problem. It's, you know, we do have to look at ourselves as a society, and we do have to look at what's going on. But I think that the next logical step is to take the movement that's already started. It's already started on your channel and Charlie's and mine and others like us, and, you know, which is already building a following, and we need to take it to the mainstream. And I think we need to take it to a level where we have a viewership where, you know, the people's voices can be heard. You know, we joke, I think we had the conversation, you've got a couple talking oranges on YouTube that get millions and millions of hits, you know, every time they post a video. And, you know, we all like entertainment, and I do as well, but we need to find a way to get this to the forefront of people's minds. And I know people are talking about it. I know people are thinking more critically than they ever have before because it's affecting them personally. But I'll tell you, if we don't get the message out there now, we're going to run into a ton of problems in the next few years. I mean, not only are we not in a recovery right now, we're in a depression, but it's going to get worse. And, you know, all they're doing, as we've said again and again, is kicking the can down the road. They're not addressing any of the root problems, and this is just the last big pump and dump. And it's not going to end any differently than it ended in 2008. You know, we had a great rally in residential real estate prices from 2000 to 2006. And how did it end? It ended with our economy destroyed, you know, broken into a million pieces of broken glass. And what did we do to fix it? Nothing. So we need to take this to the forefront of the mainstream. And one of the things I'm trying to do, I actually posted a video today called Join the Wave and started a sister channel. If you haven't checked me out yet, please do. It's Green Wave TV. That's Green Wave TV. But I'm trying to spread the word and to let our voices be heard. And, you know, I'm trying to talk to people like yourself, Warren, and Charlie, and anybody else I can get the message out to help promote this change. So that's where I think that we can start.
And I think the solutions are very, you know, non-ideological and very, very obvious, very logical. I mean, right now we have, you know, no term limits. So you have people in the Senate and the House who've been there 30, 40 years. And this allows them to have fraudulent relations with lobbyists, to have a revolving door between Washington and lobby groups and corporations. And we need to at least have term limits, and that's something, low-hanging fruit, everybody could agree on. And we could also have limitations to corporate power. And I think that's something everybody should be able to agree on. And you're right, Christopher Green, and we need to go and get more people involved in this movement. And I think a way to do that is to get more people speaking out. And I think that's what's very good. And I learned a lot from Demcad, who I think is a great broadcaster, and Charlie. There's yourself, I think, are very easy to talk to, very easy to understand. And we really have a similar view, even though our political conditions and our ideas are different. The view is that we need to fix a broken system. And I think it's going to get worse unless we change things. And this is the only time in my life where I've seen the U.S. currency at risk, and I've seen our savings put at risk. And this is different than inflation or gas rationing, which is something I've lived through. This is something where your savings, your job are so volatile and so fragile. And people don't seem concerned with it until they lose their job, and they should be concerned in advance of the problems that are going to come. And do you see any way Wall Street can wiggle its way out of this current abyss, Chris? Are you recommending gold and silver for people? I mean, do you have a strategy, or what's your thinking?
Yeah, we sure do have a strategy. I mean, I don't like equities at all, for a lot of the reasons we just talked about right now. It's not to say that there's not great companies out there with great balance sheets, but there's far too much risk for the average, John and Jane to be going all into the stock market right now. We're already up 80+%, from the trough of March 2009. And I think, we're going to see a couple of trends that are going to be long-term trends. And, one of those, which is we've got a lot of gold bugs out there, a lot of people that like silver. I really believe that's a long-term trend. Like you said, everything's at stake in this country, and our currency is at stake, the U.S. dollar is at stake. And I know we've had a little bit of a technical rebound in the dollar in recent weeks, but I think they're just shaking out some of the shorts, and I think it's going to be a long-term trend. I think you continue to see the U.S. dollar deteriorate, and, the balance sheet of the U.S. is going to continue to deteriorate. And it's going to end just like we're seeing in Europe right now with sovereign defaults across the board in Ireland and Greece and Portugal, you name it. All these countries, you're seeing the unrest, you're seeing the political and civil upheaval. You've got students in the United Kingdom rioting right now because of tuition hikes. This is coming to the United States. And that's why I believe wholeheartedly that we need to get this message out now while people are talking about it, because, as you just said, Warren, and I believe the same, it's going to get worse from here unless we get and do something about it and start implementing some change. A couple of things we can start with is we need to see some real reform. I agree with Ron Paul. We should abolish the Federal Reserve. They get an F for their ability to oversee this economy and our financial system. And, we need to get these people out of power that say one thing and do the other. So we need to vote these people out. And, we just need we need the people just to wake up. And, I think Gerald Celente was the one that kind of coined this phrase, but I think he said buy local and bank local, something in that regard. And I think Americans forget that they have a choice. No one says you have to go out and do business with a Bank of America or a J.P. Morgan Chase. You can go to your local credit union and do business with them. Nobody says you have to buy goods from China. You can buy American goods. You can support a real American recovery. So there's things that we can do. And again, I think there's a ton of smart, strapping, entrepreneurial people in this country. And if we all come together and use our God-given talents, we can affect positive change, and we can make a difference.
Well, I think so too. And I think it could be something as humble as starving the beast, where we look at the major corporate offenders and we just starve them cold. I mean, no one is telling you to buy stuff from China. No one is telling you to put stuff in a J.P. Morgan Chase. You're absolutely right, Chris. This is something we can do, vote with our dollars, at least for the time period that our dollars still work for commerce and trade. And we can, if we're high net worth, we could put our money in Singapore bonds. We could put our money in those countries that are acting efficiently and who are responsible. To keep on handing your money over to these fraudsters and these criminals is just amazing to me. And right now, the problem that I have with these companies is that they're going to mandate that people's pensions and people's savings wind up being managed by these criminals. And that is the only major employer left in this country are these financiers. And when you look at places like Arizona, where you're from, they are tremendously affected. But when you look at Washington, D.C., they're having increases in salaries, increases in the number of jobs and employment, and it's all on your dime, building out a super government that wants to strip search you every time you fly in an airplane. This is not America. It may be America, but it's not the kind of America I want to live in. I want to live in a free society where people have opportunity. Do you want to live in the same America, Chris, or Where are we headed as a country?
Well, I hope things change, and I'm personally doing everything that I can in my power to help that. But it's not an easy path, and I know guys like you and Charlie are doing the same. I expect more from the people of this country. I know a lot of people think that it's idealistic, that we can change things at this point, but I beg to differ. I think we can, and people are waking up. People know that they've been robbed. They know it. It's self-evident. Again, that moral hazard that's been set in this country, that's the greatest risk to the American recovery. So until we start taking action and prosecuting the fraudsters and putting some of these people in jail and reforming these parts of the system that are broken, will there be any meaningful change going forward? So, I would like to see some of that happen, and I think we can do it. But we're going to have to put our heads together, and we're going to have to take these ideas to a bigger stage than what we're currently on right now. And I think it's possible. I mean, we have a war on information right now. I mean, look at how the mainstream media is going after and attacking Julian Assange.
It's a war on information, and I want to thank everyone for being with us on Wide Awake News. It's Warren Pollock signing off for Charlie McGrath with guest Christopher Green. Thank you very much for your time, guys, and have a great day.
Found later under a tree, I wonder if he thought the next one could be me. Do you see the soldiers that are out today to brush the dust with bulletproof vests away? It's ironic, at times like this you pray, but a bomb blew the mosque up yesterday. There's bombs on the buses, bikes, roads, inside your market, your shops, your clothes. My dad, he's got a lot of fear, I know, but enough pride inside not to let that show. My brother had a book he would hold with pride, a little red cover with a broken spine on the back. He hand wrote a quote inside: when the rich wage war, it's the poor who die. Meanwhile, the leader just talks away, stuttering and mumbling for nightly news to play. The rest of the world watching at the end of the day, both scared and angry, like, what did he say?